Awesome. So I lead the patient experience work nationally for Envision Physician Services. And please don't hate me for that, because I know everyone has their opinion about that phrase, patient experience. I'm going to talk a little bit about what that means to me. But first, I want to ask all of you, who here considers themselves a troublemaker? Don't be shy, you're talking to somebody who got kicked out of chess club and Girl Scouts in the same month. Okay? Inappropriate humor and fighting. So you probably could have guessed I was going to be an ER doc. It turns out troublemaker is a good thing. Being disruptive is considered a good thing in some industries. When you're disrupting technology, when you're disrupting an industry, you're flipping things upside down so they can be rebuilt and improved. Disruptive docs, on the other hand, are often seen like this tornado, destructive and out of control. So as an inveterate troublemaker, when I took on this patient experience work, I decided I was going to work with some of these disruptive docs and see what could be done to rehab their reputations and their skills. So I'd like to share 2 of those stories with you today. One of the very first disruptive docs I worked with was someone who had 4 times the amount of patient complaints of any other doctor in the hospital, not just the ER. And because of this, we were asked to fire this physician. Just think about that. This is a person in a rural area who had relocated his family and was working super full-time to serve his community. So it turned out, we looked into things a little bit, and he was very passionate about serving his community and having the conversation about opioid use, both in the ER and at discharge, at a time 7 years ago when that wasn't what was expected and the norm. And by the way, he was holding himself to standards that are now what we are expected to do. Not only that, but he was working twice as many shifts as anyone in the emergency department was. So in reality, using my advanced statistical skills, I determined that he was in fact only having twice as many patient complaints as any other physician in the hospital. Who here is a nocturnist? And I'm looking for you, Charmaine. Yes, thank you all for lifestyle, for me. He was a nocturnist, so now we're not only comparing apples to oranges, but to bananas. Because you all know that the patients who come in at night are different, and we love them. So how did we help this disruptive doctor? The first thing we did is we defended him to the hospital administration, to his coworkers, to the family medicine doctor whose patients were getting advised that the prescriptions he was writing may be inappropriate, and let them understand that he was in fact serving his community and that the number of complaints that he was receiving were not as high and out of range as they looked like they might be. So we defended him. However, he was still getting 2 times as many complaints as any other doctor in the hospital. So we also observed his work, and that took the form of me tagging along for a couple of his overnight shifts and watching how he did what he did. Now, he was having that really tough opioid discussion with all of his patients, but it turned out he was one of these guys who sort of took this view: you're there, the opioids are behind me. Instead, through role play and some carefully chosen phrases, he was able to adjust his approach to have his arm around his patient, pointing out a different way to go. He now gets a bonus in his paycheck if he gets 0 patient complaints per quarter. And he has had that bonus every quarter for 3 years. My next disruptive doc started off really well at her site. Everybody liked her. Nurses, techs, clerks loved her. Patients loved her. She worked every extra shift that she was asked to work. She came into her shifts 15 minutes early, left 2 hours late. Everyone's favorite doc. But it wasn't too soon until cracks began to show. And the first thing was that she got behind on her charting to the tune of greater than 1,000 charts. The medical director and the hospital were willing to work with her on this until she started to also get complaints from nurses, techs, and clerks, and eventually patients, that she was rude and dismissive. Talking to this doc, it turned out she'd been hiding some pretty awful things happening in her life. She had just won sole custody of her children from her alcoholic ex-husband. And the person who was supposed to help her care for the children full-time, her mother, had just started chemotherapy for ovarian cancer. She was also the primary caregiver for this person as well. And that's what, by the way, had happened with the charting, okay? All of a sudden, she's got less time at home to catch up on things because she's catching up on her life. She was managing everything until she was served with that NOI of a lawsuit, and she was being treated as an enemy by the hospital, who was also named. So they weren't collaborating on the suit, they were being adversarial. And all of a sudden, those close relationships with her nurses, techs, and clerks didn't feel right to her. This doc had been doing heavy lifting her whole career, and all she needed was a little spot. And we were able to help her with that. So we worked on getting her an ideal shift schedule to be able to meet her short-term childcare needs while her mom was doing induction chemo. We were able to hook her up with a financial planner to help her with some financial difficulties that she had residual from her divorce. And we were able to get her a counselor through the Employee Assistance Program to help her deal with what I now know is litigation syndrome. We defended her to the hospital and to her staff. We shared what she felt that she wanted to share with those folks so that they understood a little bit of what she was going through. Observation in this case took the form of listening. Sitting and listening and letting her tell us what she needed. And then coaching was giving her permission to not take every extra shift that she was asked to take, to access the resources like therapy that are helpful to people who are in crisis. And she's doing much better now. So the skills that you develop as a clinician, diagnosis, differential, careful observation, you can use as a leader and as a manager of people. And in fact, physician leaders are really skilled at translating their clinical abilities to their management abilities. So whether you're a doc in the ER or a doc in the boardroom, or a doc who is that hospital administrator, I encourage you to use those skills. And for all of my troublemakers out there, grab your umbrella, find someone who's got some rain falling on them, and just open it up. Thank you.